Welcome to Better Than QandA. It is a low bar to jump, but we shall do it with style. Thank you very much for being here. This is very encouraging. Our small little group, the seed, the beginning of something great, we hope. Today we are joined by 4 special panelists. We have Ingrid, the sales Dr. Maynard. Thank you for being here, Ingrid. We have Samir, obstacle crusher Banga, not just in your personal life, which we'll hear about, but the law. He can fix any legal problem you have ever, right? Any legal problem. Yep.
Selling myself a little bit, but we can always try, right?
I ran over someone on the way in. You need to fix it now. We have Andy, Mindset Master Anderson, who always makes me feel I need to improve my life when I'm around him because he lives exceptionally. And Matt, Relentless Lavaz, both from Queensland. Thank you, gentlemen. So before we get started, feel free to yell, scream, shout, speak up, whatever you like. We're going to create this event with your help. The culture will be set by you. We have a number of questions to go through today from you and others, which will be very interesting, but primarily want to stimulate discussion. So this is a very small crowd, so feel free to put your hands up. We'll come and get you on camera and we'll hear what you have to say. The first thing I want to do, everyone, is play a game, okay? We have, in event number 2 on the 31st of March, someone called Peter Boghossian. Do you know who that is? Yes. He's coming all the way from the US. You're excited?
I commented on Facebook this morning. I'm like, is he coming?
Yes, he'll be in this room or the one next door on Friday the 31st of March. So he's famous because of some hoax papers he wrote. He's an academic. Things like he took Mein Kampf, Hitler's tome, and he replaced the Jews and so on with woke appropriate words, and it was peer reviewed and published. And he did queer performativity in dog parks where some dogs are gay and some are not, and this all got peer reviewed and published. So he's famous for that. He'll be here to teach us how to have impossible arguments. So this is a game he taught us, and we're going to play it with the panel. So panel, please come with me up the front here. Come over here onto these lines. We'll play it once together and then we'll play it once with the audience, okay? So let me explain these white lines on the floor. This is a game from Peter Boghossian. The idea is we need to have better conversations. We all know this, right? And we're not listening to one another. So he designed this game called Street Epistemology, or reverse Q&A, okay? Where we're going to put out a statement and see whether you agree with it or not. Okay, so in the middle here is where we can all stand to begin with. So just come and straddle the line for me. All come over onto this middle line. All right. Yep, face forwards. Now, if you want to move to say here it says slightly disagree, or here strongly disagree, or maybe I agree with the premise. Slightly agree here, or I strongly agree here. We can see where you stand, okay? Now, I'm going to give you the premise. Simple one to start with. Dogs are much better than cats. Okay, don't move yet, come back. There's more rules. There's a few rules. One, once you've, don't move until I give you a countdown, 3, 2, 1, move. The reason we do this is because, did you see they all started to move to agree? So now you're starting to bring in something called the Ash conformity experiment, where I feel pressured to go with the crowd. So don't move until I say move. Yes, Dan. I quit. Event is over. Go home. Vaccines work. So, he did a non sequitur. Why can't I do a non sequitur? That was the most outrageous speech. We are not here to talk about Dan. Crystal. Gee.
We are not here to swear.
Okay, so the premise is dogs are much better than cats. You need to move when I say onto the line which represents your view. 3, 2, 1, move. Wow. Okay. The point of this game is to understand each other, okay? And this is how we're going to do it. I'm going to ask you why you're standing on that line. And now I'll start here, right? I'll ask Ingrid, she'll tell you why. But listen carefully, because I'm then going to ask you to explain her reasoning, whether you agree with it or not. And you need to explain it to the level that Ingrid says, yes, you understand my point of view. Okay? Now, this may not help with your lawyering because you're all about arguing your point, not interested in your point. You need to argue Ingrid's point, okay? And then we're going to see if any of you want to move on along the line, okay? So, Ingrid, why do you slightly disagree that dogs are much better than cats?
Well, I think better's a very subjective phrase. So I think that, I know it's easy to say, are you a dog person or are you a cat person? And I think that you can be both. You can love pets in general. And I think that they have very different qualities. So I think that, for me anyway, cats have a very quirky kind of personality that is suited to a lot of people. They tend to be the type of pets that fend for themselves a little bit more than dogs. They're a bit more independent. They do their own thing. They're not demanding for affection. And I'm not saying that that's better than dogs. I'm just saying that that's different to dogs. And dogs are incredibly loyal. You know, they're that unconditional, loving little creature that, regardless of how your day's been, will be happy to see you. And so I wouldn't say that they're better, but they've just got different strengths.
Okay. Can I use another one of these mics, James? Are they on as well? I'll grab number 2 as well to give to these guys. Now, another rule, I'll slowly give you the rules. If you are at any point wanting to change your line while someone's talking, you can. You can move to another line. That will tell us a lot. Who would like to mirror back to Ingrid why she disagrees with the statement?
I'll do it. So I'll answer. I think what she's saying is it's a very biased question and they both have their own inherent qualities and different people are going to have different opinions. Firstly, when you said it's subjective, it is. What is better? So how do you even quantify or qualify what is better? To me, it's going to be very different to what it is to Ingrid, and to everyone in this audience it's going to be. So what Ingrid has then done is given us the positives of both, not necessarily the negatives. And to me, I think what she's done is said they're both equal. So how can we have such a strong opinion on something that should be a neutral topic?
So Ingrid, how accurately does he sum up your views?
I'd say about 80%, he's about 80% of the way there. I don't think that it's a neutral topic necessarily, but yeah, and you're right, I didn't talk about the negatives of both. Yeah, so yeah, 80%.
Pretty close.
Yeah.
Okay, so now the question, what would it take for you to move one line over? I'll explain first. And what would it take for you to move one line over? So we've just heard your view. Samira's summed it up in a fair way, you think. So let's ask you, what would it take for you to move over to this line?
Well, I think that just considering the negatives is a good point. So perhaps, you know, if we're going to take the position that it should be a neutral topic, then I would be squarely in the middle.
Do you feel like moving now?
Not really.
Not really? So this is the question, how genuine are you when you said that's what it would take to move? All right, let's do one more and then we'll get the audience up. So I'm going to explain, why do you strongly agree that dogs are much better than cats?
I'm answering that question for myself.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm answering that question specifically from my opinion only, and I think you did an amazing job of answering it globally in a way to say for anyone they might want a cat, a person might want a dog. For me, I want a dog because I want something with more of an emotional connection, someone that there's a little bit of reciprocity, and cats are kind of bitchy, and controlling, and narcissistic sometimes. And I kind of want a little bit of an attachment relationship with the dog, so that's why I chose strongly agree.
So when they say if you die, your cat will eat you, is that true for dogs as well? They'll both eat you. Yeah, bring the room down, person. Thanks. All right, so could you please summarise for us Matt Lavar's view of this question to the point where he's content that you understand his point of view?
Okay. So, my understanding that Matt said that this was just strictly personal from his point of view, number one, and he really likes that really strong emotional attachment to a pet, and in his experience, he's found that that's predominantly come from dogs, whereas his experience of cats has been that they're narcissistic in nature and can be bitchy.
Yeah.
Does that sum it up accurately?
Yeah, well, thank you.
So, what would it take to get you to move slightly less to one line over?
Nothing. I don't think I could. I think I'm quite happy where I am.
So there's no facts that could come to light, no experience that you could have with a cat or a dog that would move you?
If the debate was, if the question was, are they...
Question doesn't change.
Well, but the question wasn't, is it appropriate for everyone? It was just, what do you think? So for me, this is what I think. But for everyone, and I think that's how Ingrid answered it. If it's for everyone, then I would be in the middle.
Does anyone want to move? This is interesting. If I was playing the game, I would have been over here, and based on what we've heard, I would have moved one line to here. So this isn't, thank you for playing, you can have a seat, panellists. This is an interesting game to see where we think about, where we stand on issues and why, and what would get us to move. So let's play with a more serious topic and with some more serious people. No. With the audience. So 4 people, we need 4 of you to come and play. We're going to play, I'll tell you the topic and you can decide if you want to play it. This topic is to do with today's theme. Hard work is the determinant of your success. Hard work determines your success. I need 4 people who would like to argue their point. Who wants to do it? You're on? All right, come in the middle. I don't want to know your view yet. Anyone else want to play the game?
Kim and she'll do it. She'll do it. Get up, up. Don't give her a choice. Hurry up. Get
Katie
up,
Burgess.
up.
Come join in the middle. All right, we'll just do one. I think we could do it with 3. One more? 4. Oh, yeah, here we go. All right, Crystal. Anthony Curcio. Sorry, we're doing a bit of a cramped version. All right. The question is, here is strongly agree and disagrees the other side. The question is, hard work is the determinant of your success. Get ready to move in 3, 2, 1, move. Wow. Socialist. All right, so let's begin over here. Let's start first. Katie, good to see you. I haven't seen you for a while. Welcome back to Australia. Don't know why you came back. Yeah, it's still not worth it. So you are slightly agreeing that hard work is the determinant of your success. Yes. Please explain why briefly, and you're going to have to sum it up back to her to the point she's happy.
Okay. I used to believe that it was the determinant of your success, and then life threw things at me that made me realise that it's part of your determinant. There's medical issues, there's life circumstances, there's all sorts of different things that come your way that can impact your success, but without hard work, there isn't any. So it's part of it, but it's not as big a component as I used to think it was.
She used to strongly agree, but then she realised along the way that other determining factors come in that can inhibit your progress.
Is that accurate?
Almost. Hard work is still a component of success. You can't have success without some hard work, unless you're Hunter Biden or something, born into wealth. Yeah.
Okay. That's Katie's opinion, why she slightly agrees with it. So she still does agree. She just doesn't strongly agree. Let's ask you your view. Why do you slightly disagree?
I think it depends on what you mean by hard work, for starters. Like so for example, my old man was a truck driver and he used to have to work 14 hours a day, all day, every day, dragging stuff around, and I would suggest that was hard work. And for him, it depends on what you think what you determine success is. Like he had a house, he's raising his kids and that sort of stuff, in which case you'd say that was a success. But if you were going to say has he got millions to retire on and his back works and his knee works and all that sort of stuff, then I'd say he would tell you no, that's not a success, because now he has retired and he can use his caravan, but he can't get in and out of the caravan, can't get in and out of his chair and that sort of thing. So in driving a truck on your own, you're not going to make bulk millions and be able to do everything you want to do. If you own a trucking company, of which case you sit there and punch numbers into a computer, and then some people would determine that hard work, but if you base it off manual labour and actually hard work, then I would say no.
Crystal, would you like to summarise Chris's view, see if you can get him to say, yep, you understand me?
So I think Chris's reasoning for going to slightly disagree is because the definitions of hard work and success were not defined within the question. And so he's taken the definition and put the personal lens of his father's experience, who admittedly worked very hard physically and in a very demanding job for long hours, but doesn't define that as successful, because he's defined successful in that lens to be something with wealth attached, I think, and health.
Yeah, pretty much. I have been known to rub it on, so it's a lot easier to say it. I might just run stuff by Crystal in future.
He said you nailed him, 100%. That's great. So let me ask one more. Why do you strongly agree? You're the only. Which line are you on, Crystal? You're the only one that strongly agrees that hard work is the determinant of your success. Explain why, and maybe we'll have Katie reflect that back onto you.
Sure. So the reason I believe it's strongly in this is that everything that life throws at you is an obstacle that you have to overcome. And you can be fortunate. Some people start the race in life at the starting line. Some people start it 2 kilometres ahead of everybody else. And some of us start at 3Ks back that way. And it just becomes a matter of, for me personally, and again, it's a personal take, every obstacle that has been placed in front of me, I've had to overcome in order to achieve the things that I have. And it's the work rate. You have to be the hardest worker in the room, from my experience. I don't have a degree. I work in corporate finance, did the political thing, overnight. This came from hard work and just constantly just being the hardest worker in the room. Stay humble, all that, but you've got to work.
Okay, so I think you already explained, Chris, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh no.
All right, that's all right. I'll have a go at trying to reflect back to you. Sure. So the reason you strongly agree that hard work is the key to your success, it seems to, is it because you talked about we don't all start in the same place. So you're seeing it as like this great equalizer, the thing that gets you on that running track to win the race, wherever you started, 5 miles back, wherever. Is it kind of an equalizer, hard work, in your mind?
Absolutely.
Does that fairly represent why you like hard work so much? Why are you standing on that line?
100%.
Okay, good. All right. Now, what would make you move? Does anyone want to move yet?
I think, actually, a combination of what Chris and Katie said would potentially make me move, on the basis that the story that he provided is a real story, and yes, the success there wasn't the success that his father wanted. And then what Katie said about without hard work you don't succeed, but then I immediately thought of like the Kardashians. They do not work hard, but they are ridiculously successful. So you can achieve success without hard work. So I guess with a combination of both of their examples, I will move.
Go ahead. You're moving to? You're slightly disagreeing that it's all about hard work. Wow, not even to the centre. Katie?
I think that slightly agree and slightly disagree are very similar, because we're both thinking that hard work is important but not the be-all and end-all. So I think that they're quite similar in there. You could stand on both and have the same argument.
Which is why I'm standing in the middle.
If Anthony had started with Down syndrome, would he be where he is?
I can appreciate that argument.
Oh, I was going to say you were like, yeah, bloody oath I would be.
So the question there is, if Anthony started life with Down syndrome, so he was back by 100 miles or whatever.
Wow, you said that, not me, but yeah.
No, that's scientifically accurate, I think.
Okay, fair call.
Yeah. I had to check. Am I being racist? Have you seen that joke? The joke, right? What do I get if I divide 125 genders by white supremacy? How much climate change do we have? I ran that through my mind.
7 windmills.
7 what?
7 windmills of change.
Okay. Yeah, you're Asian. You don't count. So, Philo, same thing. Same thing. We can no longer publish this on YouTube now. Anyone here you've talked about, you've moved, you've talked a little bit about being flexible. So, gentlemen, take that. What would make you seem fairly stuck in your view there, like you seem fairly confident. What would make you step over a line or two? How could I convince you to do that? What would you need to see?
There
what would need to
are
happen?
things like there are charities or Make-A-Wish Foundation and that sort of stuff which do help people out, but the issue is they're few and far between, and they can't, like just anybody off the street can't do them. Like you need to have somebody who knows somebody to get you to be able to get ahead that way. So there is definitely a chance of people getting certain places, but I will never be in the NBA, for example. So being the hardest worker in the room, I'm not going to outdunk Shaquille O'Neal.
Right, so that's a defence of your line, but the question is, what would make you move lines?
If I identify as Shaquille O'Neal and everyone lets me use a trampoline, then I can get there.
So there's nothing that would make you move lines?
Not really. I think there's far too many barriers that mean you can't be... It depends on what you mean by success, really, though. Yeah. Like, you can have a successful, fulfilling life with, if you're in an African nation with a stick and a wheel bashing it down a street. If you love that, then you've made a success. Okay. I think Western countries are different as well, where us to be successful, I always need more. I have a house, I can pay I used to before I quit my job and went for politics, but I wasn't happy. I wanted to make things better again. That's why I went into politics. Yeah. But now I'm a failed politician and an ex-cop, ex-army, just doing nothing. Am I a success or a failure? Like me having nothing now, but at least I threw my hat in the ring and had a go. So
question, if you just named a few things that you've either finished or politics, you said you're a failed politician. That's a bit rough on yourself, but it's true. I love you though, Chris. Maybe that career wasn't for you. So if you had succeeded at some of those, do you think you'd be more likely to have been standing in one of these lines today? And the fact that you haven't has proven to you, as a hard worker, I know you as that hardworking person, that's made you think, well, no, hard work is not working.
Not for me. I could have chosen to go Liberal or whatever else it was and probably done a lot better. So I chose a bit of a harder route. But I also don't feel like I have issues about being successful. There's a lot of people I know, I network a lot of people, I could probably borrow money from people to get successful and stuff, but there's a lot of people that I've spoken to as a cop who I'm like, those people are never going to get to where they want to be. And whether that be because they started in commission housing, they did whatever else it is, and then they got into drugs and then things got worse and there's no one there to help them out. But they're all choices they made. So Anthony is correct where if you started off as a 7 foot tall, fit individual who ignored everything in their upbringing, they could still be successful. Yeah. But it is a lot harder, and if at any point along the way they did their knee or they did their ankle, they could no longer be, they're not going to get there. They're not going to get a private school, they're not going to get college, they're not going to be able to pay for uni. So,
okay. Last question and we'll finish this game. So you're also strong in your view, and knowing your story, I can see how much hard work and an internal locus of control has played for you. What do you think of this? Don't just give me an opinion why he's wrong. Tell me what would make you move, if anything, more towards this way.
Free laser. He lasers his chest, if anyone's wondering.
I wish I was that clean. Anyway, no. What would cause you to move left?
If it was applying it to somebody else, because we have different opinions of the journey of life doesn't make one right and one wrong. So if I'm looking to compromise and meet somebody halfway, then I'd say, yeah, that's probably fair for your view of life, and I appreciate that and I can understand that, and I'd probably be more inclined to step across. But for myself, because the question was directed at my view of and what I would do for me, that's why I'm so rigid and staying over here. But if it was to meet somebody halfway and understand their journey, then I'm more inclined to say, yeah, I'd definitely step across.
Very good. All right, thank you for playing, all four of you. Thank you. It's funny, when they play that game in the US with a more left-leaning audience on college campuses, you see people moving a lot. And it's interesting that the type of crowd that I guess Discernible attracts and these people attract, you're all more, I don't know what the word is. Crazy. No, you take more responsibility for yourselves. People had stronger opinions, stronger values, and were less likely to move than what I've seen on YouTube. So that's interesting. Older as well, yes. Okay, so as you can see, we've already started something that I think is way better than ABC's Q&A in that we are already trying to understand other people's opinions instead of kicking them out. Have you all seen that? Stan Grant kicks someone out for asking an unsanctioned question. I think it was a setup because they go through the questions beforehand. How did he not know that was coming? All right, let's get started. We've already been going for half an hour. So what we're going to do, people, is we'll go for about an hour, and then I've built in a nice little 11-minute break in the middle where we'll roll some footage from Discernible for 11 minutes. You can go to the toilet, do what have you, and we'll come back for another hour, and we'll have your questions as well. Let's get started, everyone, with these that have been submitted to us. Grab a mic. We're going to start nice and big and ask the big question. This is from Simon. Thank you for watching, Simon, for this question. What is your definition of success? So why don't we go straight off to Andy Anderson? Because you strike me, feel free to add a bit of bio in here. I haven't done a bio deliberately, so I want people to learn about you. You can tell them what you do, and you're on TV and so on, but you strike me as a successful person. But then I have to ask, I think that, but is success about having a TV show, about having multiple gyms, about having a fit body, which is more important to me than perhaps someone else? Like, how do we determine success?
Great question. How are we going? We good? Cool. So before we start, I just want to say a big thanks to Matty. Let's give him a clap. How good is he? Doing such an amazing job. I really appreciate it. So I think this is a great question. I think for me, especially over the last 3 years, my values and definition has changed, for sure. And I think now my definition would be freedom, it would be love, and it would be health. When previously, it would probably be $1 bazillion, 1 million gyms, a whole bunch of other things. And so I think what we've all gone through over the last few years has definitely shifted my perspective around that, for sure. And so now I truly see that as my definition of success.
So follow-up question then. Are you only able to say that because you've already achieved a lot of the success metrics that I mentioned that a lot of us might be trying to get? So physical, business, wealth, and now, because this is quite a common theory, you hear people like, say, Jordan Peterson talking about this. As you make a culture rich enough, they start to care about higher things on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They start to think about the climate, the environment, self-actualization, purpose, vision, instead of survival. So could you have come to this conclusion without the successes that you've had?
Yeah, look, I think I could have. I do. I think losing things makes you get perspective, for sure. So I think we've all lost a lot of things over the last few years. I mean, business-wise, through the pandemic, I lost millions. We closed most of our gyms. And a lot of that shifted my thought process around what's really, really important to me. Losing freedom and the thought of losing freedom long-term really gave me perspective as well. So I think perspective is what shifted that within me. Would I think differently if I hadn't achieved so many things previously? I'm not sure. But what I know now for sure is that what I value is extremely different, and I still value business and moving forward and progress and all those awesome things, but none of that really means anything if you don't have freedom, if you don't have love, if you don't have health.
So was it freedom, love, and
health?
Health. Freedom, love, and health is your definition of success. Okay, very good. Anyone else want to have a go at that before I go to the next question? Ingrid, just grab your mic.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I think, the last 3 years has really shaped a lot of us. It's certainly changed me. Where I started to where I've kind of emerged, I feel like a very different person. And so my definition of success now is, for me, is to be able to like what I see, like who I see when I look in the mirror. That's incredibly important. I'm not saying that wasn't important before, but perhaps that's the number one determinant. And for me as well, it's about living a life where I feel like I'm leaving behind a legacy that I'm proud of. It's something that at any point in my life, if anything was to end, I would actually be okay because I feel like I'm good, I'm square. and it's an internally driven life these days. So it's, been mentioned before about, all the externals, they're measures, for other people, but for me, going within and making sure that I'm living with my own set of values, and within those set of values, regardless of what the external view of those values might be, and that I'm living lightly in the world. That, to me, that's success.
Does that resonate with everyone? Success, it does. I often think about that with the sense of what would they say at my funeral? And when I originally asked myself that question, I was not happy with what they would say. It was positive, but I was not happy with, oh, he's a nice guy, he plays piano well, and he's funny. How boring. And so I set out to change my life. That's a very good view. You go, all right, I'm going to combine a couple of questions here to talk about purpose and see how we find our purpose and our passion. This question's from Kerry. She says, or he says, I'm not sure, I get mad at traffic. I get depressed by the sheer repetitive nature of going to work. How do I find magic in the mundane? How do you find inspiration to level up your game? She's a poet. I'm swimming with my nose barely above the waterline. How do you find your passion? A similar question, Julie says, how do I figure out what I should be doing for a job when I've spent my whole life working in jobs I hated? So, I think we need to hear from Samir and Matt on this. Samir, what do you think?
Getting mad at traffic is completely fine. If that's the way that you cool yourself down, go for it. As long as they don't hear it, and as long as you don't jump out of the car and bash them up, as we saw a few weeks ago, I think that's completely fine. Look, people need to get angry. People need to get upset. People need to be happy, and we need to experience all the range of emotions. And if you don't, I actually argue that's probably not healthy. You cannot be happy all the time, and this stupid Western concept of being happy all the time is ridiculous. Anyone from, I think, any Eastern country, or from the East generally, and probably even Eastern Europeans, know that it's not true. You can't. You just cannot be happy all the time. You're not always going to love your job. I don't always like being a lawyer. I love it sometimes. There's other times I hate it. One of the issues I have is I'm held to a higher standard sometimes. I don't want to be. If I want to get into a fight with someone because they're pissing me off, I want to be able to do it. Don't say you can't do it because you should know better. And I guess Chris will probably have his issue too as a former copper in Crystal. You then said, no, you can't. What about if you're a trained fighter, like Andy is? At that point, you're held to a higher standard. I don't want that all the time. And I do swear a lot because of some of the clients I have. And it's very difficult to control myself sometimes. As Anthony and we have realised, we try bloody hard, but sometimes you can't do it. Look, for example...
Do you then find magic in the mundane?
I do. I look for little things then. So if it's an area of law I don't like, I can't stand family law. I do it, but I can't stand it. I've had my personal issues there. I've experienced other people's personal issues, and sometimes you get emotionally invested in this shit that you just don't want to, and you shouldn't. But then you look for those little wins along the way. You look at trying to appease your client a little bit, but getting little wins rather than just a big one. And if it's just that extra day with dad, or the extra day with mum, or some extra money that they actually have money, so they're not being held by the barrel of a gun. There's no duress on them. That's how you look for it. Now, it also depends what job you do. So for some people, if you're stacking shelves at Coles, that's not a bad thing. There's other ways to... My family has this philosophy. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what you do for work. Everyone needs to make a living, and unfortunately, the system we have, money is important. You need to live. You need to feed yourself. So one of the struggles I had with myself over the last 2 years, I've been incredibly lucky. I had my own business. I did not have the same struggles everyone did, and that's why I changed. Now, my partner knows this. For a year, I didn't charge anyone a cent. We didn't, because she was earning, so I was able to do that. If I didn't have that background, I couldn't have done it. But for me, that was a massive ethical challenge in myself, going, how the hell am I sitting here completely fine? I can drive around in lockdown, and legitimately, I'm happy to say, so I was driving around in lockdown. I'm a lawyer. What are you going to do? Ready with that? Sorry, I'm going to a client's house. What are you going to do? I don't know if I can trust you.
He was the worst copper. He's so laid back.
But I could do that, whereas other people couldn't, right? Medical professionals could go to work, and they were, apart from the vaccination issue, put that aside, but they were doing really well. We have medical members in our family, doctors, and some very highly credentialed specialists who made a shit ton of money. But to them, success was money, so they've done really well. Sometimes you've got periods or patches in your life that are going to be mundane. You just need to get through it. I have shit times, everyone does. We've had shit times together. And I mean, if we actually did all right in the last 2 years, but we always have patches where they're not good. And I think people just need to realise this is very, very normal. It's about getting through to the other side, hitting goals, maybe bringing the level of your goal down and not trying to hit the extreme. Like if I'm trying to be a multi-billionaire next year, that's never going to happen. It's just not going to happen.
Not with that attitude.
But if my goal was to buy a fancy car, I've already hit that because I'm doing well enough that I can do that. So it's...
I like your
BMW.
BMW.
It's not a bad car. It's got my number plate. The name is my name, so I can't really hide from anyone anymore.
That's a mistake, by the way. Never get a number plate that... I won't go any further. I have some stories to tell, but I'm not going to do it publicly. Matt Lavaz, I'm intrigued by Julie's question here, this idea of she spent her whole life working jobs she's hated, and she wants to know, how do you figure out what you should be doing for a job? This idea of employment being so core to our identity, and some of the work I've seen you do, very interesting the way I've seen, you talk a lot about being a father, and there's a big identity shift there when that happens from the young, achieving male. Do you have kids? No, from this specimen to that specimen, right? To get from there to there. So tell us, how do you find your passion, and does that change over time?
Well, first of all, I think there's still hope for you, Andy, to be able to rise up. But I think that as a culture, generally, we focus on the wrong stuff a lot. And I think that there's many levels to this. So we're in a culture that's promoting like a hyper-individualistic view of the world, like what can I get? It's all about me. And I've been in the coaching industry for over 10 years. And so coaching is inherently about taking responsibility for your life. And that's something that's been amazingly important for me, and it's changed me in great ways. But I think in the end, then you end up focusing on yourself too much, and then you compare yourself to other people. And so comparison is the enemy, is the thief of joy. It takes everything away from us if it's like, well, hopefully one day I'll have muscles as big as Andy's, which is a goal. But until then, I'll just enjoy the ones that I have. Sorry, I was just expecting a few more people to laugh than you, but thank you, I appreciate it.
Look at his tricep popping out. He's got no problem. Put those away.
It's a real inspiration. So there's a study that I love referencing, and this is a study that was done in Harvard University, and it went over, I think, 75 years. And so they followed people out of university, and they followed them through their entire life, right, out of school into old age. And they were trying to answer the question, what gives people purpose and meaning and fulfillment? And so, even now, I think if you were to interview a bunch of young kids, they would say dumb stuff like, I just want to be rich, or, I want to be famous on Instagram, which is really, it's just stupid and meaningless. Like, unless it serves a purpose or something, which a lot of the time it doesn't. But anyway, they found that the answer to the question was the quality of the relationships that we have. It didn't say the quantity, and it didn't even say the job that we do. And I think career is important, but I think relationships are much more important. One of the things that I've studied a lot over the last 4 years has been attachment, and attachment's a relatively new science. But essentially that it says that the quality of the relationships that you have directly impact your self-esteem, and they directly impact your sense of fulfillment in life. And so I think more importantly, learning how to feel more love in our lives and focusing on family and focusing on relationships. And even, for example, if you look at it like a hyper-individualistic culture kind of wants to dismantle the family. You look at statistics now around young people and depression and anxiety, suicide rates, probably impacted a lot by social media, but also I think by a separation from their families. So I think it's like a long way of answering the question and kind of pushing it another way and saying, well, if you've got a shitty job, but if you love the people that you're around, you're probably going to feel okay about it. But if you have a shitty job and you've hung your hat on that's going to be the thing that's going to give me some level of like salvation, then you're going to be extremely disappointed when you get there, because it's only ever going to make you feel good for a small amount of time. And then 5 years later, you're going to be searching for something else, and you have to get another job or buy another car or get a bigger number plate.
Very good. So do you think... Matt, do you feel we underestimate the role the ancillary things play? Like we go for the dream job, but we underestimate the people you work with can really bring that dream job down. Because it sounds like Julie, who's asking this question, is really looking for what you said, a salvation in a new job. It's not the solution.
Yeah, well, definitely. I think that the pendulum always swings, right, through history. And I think the pendulum was family and family values, but then within that there was, maybe there was too many guys that were a dick and too many women that felt suppressed, and then it was like feminism, yeah, like let's fight that, and now it's like fuck the family. Like just fuck it off completely, and it's like you don't need them, and then everyone's taught to just go on their own. But that's a disaster, because the basic fundamental framework of humanity is a successful family. And I think that so much of who we are comes from that. And if we reject it completely, we're just never going to find our true fulfillment and happiness in really any job. Like I'll give you an example, my wife. So I've got a 2-year-old son and I've got a 1-month-old daughter, and they're both born on the same day. How crazy is that? So we're gonna pray for them to be able to love each other a lot through those birthdays. But so when my wife and I had my son Noah 2 years ago, we were both like that success couple. People were like, you're a power couple. And we're like, yeah, we're a power couple. Like we really loved the identity of it, and we thought, we're gonna have a child, and like someone's gonna raise him, and it's all gonna work out fine. And and then when we had him and we came home, I was slapped in the face with the reality of how that's not gonna work. And I sat down with my wife and I said, one of us needs to quit. I'll do it if you don't want to do it. Like, I'm more than happy to do it if you don't want to do it. And then she came home from work a month later, I think, or a couple of weeks later, and said, I've resigned. And she struggled a lot with the identity shift. It's probably taken a couple of years, because for a while she was like resenting being a mum in a way. I need to go out and, she's a great salesperson. She's an amazing salesperson. But the more that she has surrendered to that role and just like loved it, it's changed her life. She's a great mum. She loves being a mum. And so I think, and again, I'm just kind of pointing it back in that direction. I think that we're looking for things in the wrong places a lot in our culture at the moment.
Can I just jump in there? Thanks, Matt. I love what you've just said. Samira and I were talking earlier, just about those stages in life. And, I turned 50 last year, and my experience has been that it's very similar to that stage when, I first became a mum nearly 22 years ago. And it was about saying goodbye to the person that I had been up to that point, because I was never going to be that person ever again. All of a sudden it was about somebody else and their life and being there, to support him. And and that was a big identity shift, but there was an enrichment within that, in letting that go and in embracing the new. And I feel like I'm kind of heading towards, being a matriarch now. I'm now no longer, certainly not the maiden anymore, and I'm, my son, my role as a mother, I'll always be a mum, but he's now an independent adult. And so now, finding that new identity has been a really interesting journey, and I have to say goodbye to that now. So it's about that. And just coming back to Julie's question about the job, I think it's about, regardless of what we're doing, I think it's about the meaning that we give anything that we do. And if we can find a positive meaning in anything, the mundane, the exciting, the trivial, the difficult, the painful, it's about the quality of the meaning that we give it, I think, that enables us to get through something and to kind of reach the other side.
I would add to this, Ingrid, you look great for 50, I must say. You're the best looking 50 I've ever seen. But moving along from that, I don't know if Julie's here, but I want to be more practical, and no offence, but I just want to go straight to the point. I've done a lot of things myself. I've cleaned, I've delivered pizza, I've run restaurants, I've waited, and I've cleaned toilets. So I've done all that. And that was because we were from a low-income family, we were first-generation migrants. But Julie, what I'd say is, I don't know if you've got a degree or if you want to study further. Part of this comes down to where in life you're at. I have 2 lawyers right now who started. One got her law degree at 50-odd. She works for me. And there's another bloke who came from India who was an accountant in India, got his law degree. He had, I think, 40-something. So you can always change. For most people, there are, I will say always change, but for some people it's going to be harder than others. This also comes down to what you do. If your experience is in one realm, it's not as easy to go to another realm, but it can be done. I could go back to being a chef. I don't want to, but I could do it. I just have to, get back into practice, remember the proportions that I need to do, and I'll start swearing more and hating people more, but I can do it. And there's no different. If you want to run a restaurant, if you want to do that, you can do that. Practically speaking, everything that these guys have said is right. I don't disagree with it. But if you hate your job or the jobs that you've done, and it sounds like a number of jobs, then there's no reason you can't keep looking if you can find it. There is work out there. So keep going. Maybe you can intern, for example. I've had people in their later ages, and again, you could be 25, I don't know, but I've had people who are 35 saying, hey, can I do a few days in your law firm just to see what it's like, especially over the last 3 years. People who never would have come in and said, hey, can we help you out? So you can change. This isn't as hard as it seems. Yes, the practicalities become harder if you have a mortgage and all that type of jazz, but 2 people here went to politics. You've heard what Chris has done. I can tell you the number of times I changed. I never wanted to be a solicitor. It just happened. Now I like it. I like beating people, so I enjoy it. But it wasn't ever a goal of mine. So it can be done. Actually, there's 3 people who are politicians here. So maybe even more, I don't know, about 4. People change all the time. And one thing that I can say is I have a family member who's no longer with us who became a doctor, I think in his 50s. So that's a big, big achievement. I don't even think he was a smart bloke, but he did it somehow. There's no reason to hold yourself back. There's all this philosophical talk, but practically speaking, you can do it. And that's the one of the positives in Australia. Even over the last 3 years, you can still make small changes like that, or big changes if you want to call it that.
Samir, obstacle crusher banger living up to his name. Invented by ChatGPT, in case you're wondering. I literally put in the bios of each panelist and said, come up with a cool catchphrase, and it called you, except for yours, because you're already the sales doctor, that's your business, but everyone else it came up with. Okay, how are we going? Would you rather be listening to this or Stan Grant? Q&A. Fake tan, this is my natural yellow.
I can put fake tan on, I can go... Hey, Andy, you're used to fake tan. I think there's a few people here that will do it.
It's real, I promise you. No fake tan.
For now, it's real. It just depends where you want him to tan, I guess.
Oh,
pick
boy.
the area.
His Instagram is half naked anyway. I've seen most of his body. Big thank you for the people who are watching, and also there's 10 people who donated a ticket who are not here today but wanted to support this event. And that means, because of that, we are able to publish this for free because we've paid for the room, we've paid for everything. So thank you for doing that, and for the people who've paid to be here in the room. So this will now be published, if we keep it clean enough, people, I'll be able to publish it in full on YouTube, something we don't do anymore, and we will stream it live at the same time as ABC's Q&A.
Although we're talking about setting realistic goals here. I don't know that we have the pull power yet, but maybe if Andy takes his shirt off, he might be okay.
It all starts somewhere. Federal election coverage, we beat Sky News on their YouTube live viewers.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
So, and we're tiny. So today's budget is about $1,000 for this, $800. So it's literally, I worked out, right, Q&A. If you take, I've worked in TV and production before, I know how this works. If you take the wages of everyone for that one night and for the producers to field questions throughout the week, I calculated it'd be over $100,000 per episode for Q&A to put on a show. Then I looked at the number of people in the room and I calculated it'd be about $175 to $200 per ticket that they should be paying Q&A to run an episode with the level of production and moving cameras and so on that they have. There is no way in hell I'd pay $200 a ticket to go and see ABC's Q&A, but because it's free, paid for by the taxpayers, they cheat the market, you see? All right. High performance is the theme of this town hall Q&A. So let me ask this question. This is from Anthony. High performance, I think it's from you. High performance is a constant battle. To consistently perform at an elite level, I'm thinking of you, Mr. Pro Athlete, takes more than motivation. It takes a mindset that few naturally possess. So what do you do in order to keep yourself performing at such a high level? You should also tell them the professional athlete that you are.
Yeah. Cool. Great question. So, so I'm a pro athlete in the WBFF. Bodybuilding, yeah. And of course, run different businesses and train in other areas as well. And I just think to be consistent, you really need to be able to balance turning on, obviously, having really good habits and rituals, knowing how to handle your mindset, also your energy is such a huge factor. If you can't manage your energy and your mindset and emotions through the ups and downs of anything, then you're not going to be able to sustain performance or success or anything in life in general. And so I think, first and foremost, anyone that wants to perform at a high level, you have to understand that no one is perfect and no one is just born absolutely elite in every single way. It's a learned behaviour, and we are all effed up. I'm going to say effed up so you can live stream. We're all effed up in our own different ways and at different times. But I think if you have the foundation of really solid habits and rituals around optimism, around goals, around knowing who you need to be, especially in those tough moments, etc., then you're going to be able to step up majority of the time. And there are days where you need to rest, there are days where you need to reflect, and you need to stop, and then a lot of the time you just need to push through as well. And so I think that there's no really simple answer that you can give to a constant high performance life, except that it is a learned behaviour. It takes a period of time to build up. You're not going to go from zero to hero overnight. It takes weeks and months to just brick by brick layer your confidence, layer your energy, layer your strength mentally, emotionally and physically. And it's a process. And I think you have to have patience as well to understand that.
So supplementary question from me.
Yes.
I, like many people, I find it easy to perform at a very high performance level for a very short period of time.
Yeah.
Whether it be, diet and weight loss, or my job, or I go really hard on whatever endeavor I'm learning to do a new skill. Yeah. But inevitably it wanes. So because you've achieved a lot more than I have in certain areas, right? Mm-hmm. What can you teach me about the difference between going really hard and consistency? Like I'm told that you need to be consistent, and that in the end will win over going high performance for a short period of time. But let's be real. How blandly consistent can you be and get results? Do you have to be kind of still pretty high performing consistently, or can you kind of do like just a plodding everyday consistency and that'll get you results?
It'll get you results, but it's what level of results do you want, right? And so, again, I think it comes back to understanding your why, understanding your motivation and your goals, and also understanding a timeline. You've got to be practical about it too. Where do you want to get to, and how quickly do you want to get there? And then you need to make your decisions based on that, because any high performance goal is going to require sacrifice, big time. And whether that's professionally or personally or physically. So you have to be willing to ask yourself the question, how much time, effort, sacrifice, pain am I willing to put into the goal to succeed in a certain time frame? And so if you're happy to slowly get a result and slowly build, then that's your decision, and then you can plan accordingly. If you have a short time frame and you need to go hard, then you need to be good with doing the hard thing regularly and hurting more and sacrificing a bit more. Again, mentally, emotionally, and physically. So it comes down to decision making. How badly do you want to be a certain individual or perform in a certain way or have certain things? And once you make that decision, you have to be prepared to go through the process, and it's not always fun. In fact, a lot of the time, it's fucked up, it's hard, it's painful, there's tears. I know, I ruined it. I couldn't help myself,
no,
sorry.
It's COVID talk that will get us cancelled.
True,
that's fine.
Cool. So, yeah, look, I think with everything in life, no matter what I've done or what I've achieved, I always look at the goal first and foremost and say, what am I willing to do and what am I not willing to do? And I always I always look at the goal and I have to realise that it's going to be 10 times harder than I think it is. That's how I make my decision if I'm going to go after it. I look at it and I think, okay, that's going to be painful. This is what I think it's going to cost me, or the sacrifice I'm going to have to put in. And then I
10 times.
And then I 10x it, or I add 10% to it, or whatever you want to do. And then that is a more realistic view of what it's actually going to feel like, or what you're going to have to do to get the job done. And then you've just got to do it, and you've got to keep promises to yourself and push forward. And as I said, you just got to realise that you're not perfect. No one is. But the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is just understanding that sacrifice and consistency day in and day out will get you there, and you will get stronger, and it does get easier. But if you're not applying yourself, you don't reap the rewards.
So last question for you on this. We all have off days, we all have down days where we're pressures, sick, tired, whatever, and we just can't manage to live that high performance life consistently. On those days, am I better off to sacrifice my high performance and just do something lame but stay consistent? Or am I better off to sacrifice my consistency, do nothing, go and, whatever, and then the next day, twice as hard, keep, high performance?
Yeah, good question. I think the way I would decide is I would look at how many days per week or month am I feeling like that. If it's one a month, I'd just take the day. I'd get a block of Kit Kat, I'd sit on the couch, maybe I'd put on YouTube and watch you for a little bit, or watch Samir on a live stream, and I'd just eat a block of Kit Kat and chill. And that would be fine, because you're allowed to take a day and recoup.
What if it's twice a week?
That's ridiculous.
Not the Kit Kat, the feeling of overwhelm, the feeling of I just can't perform at this level consistently.
You'll feel that every day. If your goal is worthy enough, if your goal is big enough, you will feel overwhelmed pretty much every day. You'll feel unworthy. Everyone's going to have imposter syndrome on the way to greatness, because you're not there yet, right? And so this is why so many people fail or opt out, because they look at this goal and they let that negative voice win and beat them, and then they start to believe that they're not worthy. But we're all worthy. The difference is that you have to prove it and earn it, and some are willing to earn that, and some are not.
Ingrid, did you face obstacles with the whole, because you work in corporate land, right? You consult to them and so on. So budgets and so on dry up around COVID time, or how did you face obstacles?
It was really interesting, actually. I had the best 2 years I've ever had in my business over lockdown, which was totally unexpected.
Okay.
Because I shifted everything to online. So the Sales Doctor is all about improving sales team performance through changing behaviours.
So you're the wrong person to ask, because you did really well. Because this next question is about how to overcome obstacles. So you've done that a lot with your life, Samir. So let me just give you this next question, which is related to that last one. This is from Bridget. Obstacles are a constant in life and can often throw anyone off track. Kit Kats from the fridge, amazing, better than room temperature. How do you stay focused, when so many obstacles have been thrown at all of us over the course of the last 3 years?
So to give a bit of a background, some of the obstacles we've already mentioned. I mean, being first gen isn't really an obstacle. Not for me, that was an obstacle for my parents. Even though I came here when I was 6 weeks old, I never had to wear a turban. So we're from a Sikh Punjabi background. My dad wears a turban, my brother did. They faced a hell of a lot. My obstacles came through them. I mean, the first probably up till about year 10, we were fighting every single day, literally speaking, close to literally speaking at times, because we were in a very white school in a place called QandA, and at that point there were no one. There were some Italians, some Greeks, but they were accepted as Aussies. We weren't. There was a couple of Maltese guys and us, and it was that we just stood out. So we had to justify our presence in that school. Anthony probably knows what I'm talking about, because we're both from the West, but two different, Melbourne West and Sydney West. I then broke every single cultural norm that I think my family ever set from me. I had a baby at 16, which probably wasn't, it's not exactly normal for anyone. But
you were 16?
I was 16 when my first daughter was born. I should say first, I don't have more, but one, my daughter was born. For me, that actually became the biggest motivation I've ever had in life, because it's very easy to screw yourself around or feel bad about yourself. That's too easy, actually. But when there's responsibilities that you have, every action has a consequence. Now, that sounds a bit negative, but my daughter is now my responsibility. Everything I do is going to be, it's for her as well and my family. So when I let my family down, so to speak, I then owed them a lot. That became a huge motivational factor for me in life. So I did my first business degree, then I did my law degree because I just thought it wasn't enough. Then I was going to do more, but I ended up enjoying what I was doing and I stayed in law. These are the kinds of things that work for me. We had a period in my family where we had very little money for a bit. We don't have that issue anymore. My brother's got his own place, my parents are doing well, we're doing well. This goes back to the hard work question too. But I always found a motivational factor. And with Anthony's question, it's not just motivation, no. It's also then wanting to beat the shit out of other people, not literally speaking, but beating my competition. That was how I did it. So if someone, for me, it was people that said, you can't do this, fuck it, I'm going to make sure I can do it just to prove you wrong. That's the kind of stuff I did, and that worked really, really well for me. I don't expect that to work for everyone, but my ego just went, screw you, I'm not going to let this happen, and I did it. And there was a point where I was looking at doing a medicine degree as well, sitting GAMSAT, just to be like, you know what, I'm going to tick all these three things. I've got finance, I've got law, I'm going to do medicine as well. What stopped me there is I realised I'm probably going a little bit far, and I'm not in the right place to be a doctor, because I wouldn't be there anymore anyway, because I wasn't willing to get vaccinated and I wasn't willing to do the...
Now we're cancelled. Unbelievable. So it's a good opportunity to say stick to the question, buddy. So obstacles. So you are talking about how you've overcome obstacles, but
that is actually one of the biggest obstacles a lot of people in this room face and what your viewers face. So as much as we don't want to get cancelled, you've got Twitter now, right? So you're fine. So Elon Musk is helping you.
But are you essentially saying not angry, but get motivated and just push against those obstacles? That's 100%, the way through.
100%. And as Andy said, you have bad times. For him, it was a Kit Kat. For me, I guess it's a bowl of ice cream, or I can eat 2 litres of ice cream at a time without an issue. So you have bad times. Everyone has a different motivating factor, or for some people, what's going to get them to the next day, whether it be food, it might be going to the gym. For me, that's a big factor. I'm not as big as this guy, but gym is...
You do a fat insult live. Unbelievable. Oh, you're talking about Andy.
I was talking about Andy at that point.
Your finger was pointed more this way.
Okay, if we're going to literally speak, I'm not as big as either of them then at that point.
Oh. In the break we're about to have, we're going to roll some video and see footage from 2 years ago. You were on there as well, I think.
Yeah, and I was a bit skinnier back then, actually.
Oh, I was half the size.
Were you? Yeah, actually, we spoke back then about how you could squat about 130 and I couldn't.
It's been a stressful 2 years. Leave me alone. So, all right, that makes sense. All right, thank you very much. Let's get another question before we have a nice break. Hey, do we want to talk about food, or do we want to go to the gender question? There's a gender question. The gender question's for you, and you just rolled your eyes.
I know.
All right, well, let's do the gender question. We'll do the food one later, because we can. Make me hungry. A question for you, Ingrid, from Jen. Jen says, is it really a man's world in business and in corporate life? We all have some experience of favoritism and bias and so on that could possibly be a result of gender inequality, but the man's world trope seems to have taken on a mythic status. I wonder if it persists long after actual gender bias has been equalised. Do you see this man's world thing happening in your world with sales and corporate?
So I'm running the risk, aren't I, of being, she said that. Yeah, look, I can really speak from my experience and then from what I've observed of others. I think we no longer live in a man's world. That's my experience. I think with a lot of the gender equality mandates for a lot of organisations, that's kind of null and void, really. Now, I know that there will be a lot of women that will be like, that's not true, we've got to, smash the patriarchy. Let me tell you that my experience, I've been self-employed for the last 20 plus years. I haven't come up against it that much, and it's easy to conflate sometimes a bias or somebody not perhaps seeing what I think I'm worth as a gender issue. I'm sure that there's more than just, that one issue that makes people have a particular viewpoint or not. So I really think that we need to look for each other's strengths. We also need to own our own strengths. We have to find our own voices and not be afraid of other people not always agreeing with us. But like today, we saw, we also need to be able to listen. What I will say is that my experience has been, so I'll give you a particular example in a minute, but my experience has been that when we look for the things that unite us, we are far stronger and we have far more in common than the things that divide us. That's certainly been my experience. So last year I was invited to be a speaker at a particular executive group, shall we say. And somebody advised me that the person that I was speaking with is a misogynist. And, you know, and he's really, you know, the, what is it, pale, stale, grey, you know, that kind of, that, anyway. And my experience of this man was that couldn't have been further from that. Now, men and women both have said about this particular individual that he's a bit ornery and a bit difficult, and again, that wasn't my experience. But what I think I recognised in him was that there was a lot of experience that he offered. There was some gems, through his career that he shared with me that I really embraced and valued and took that on board. So I don't know. I don't think there's anything special about me at all, apart from the fact that perhaps I really genuinely love people and I'm incredibly curious about what makes other people tick. So I'm always looking for the things that, you know, are unique about an individual. So I think it's a question that I'm really getting tired of. You know, I have to say I'm really over it. I'm over vested interests. You know, having that binary definition of this or that, one or the other. You've got to choose this side or that side, and I just don't think life's like that, unfortunately.
So Ingrid, are you making so you've got got ABC and Friends saying it's all gender, blah, blah, blah. Then you've got Sky News saying it's not, men are great. You know, it's a simplification of the argument. Are you subscribing to that side of that? No. Do you
one or the other?
The reason why, because the binary you mentioned, Jen raises this idea that there was perhaps something bad in gender inequality, but it's probably mostly solved now, and we're persisting with a trope.
Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. So I just think that people have biases. And they've got lots of different flavours of bias. And I think that, again, some of those are really difficult to overcome. Somebody's got a bias that they're not aware of, which is, you know, most people really, when you dig deep enough, you know, you're going to find something there. So, yeah, I don't necessarily think that it's the end of people who have a gender bias. That's the end of it. Nor do I think it's the end of other sorts of biases either. But I really think if we just be the best that we can be and do everything we can to work around that, to educate people, but not to indoctrinate people or push an opinion down somebody's throat. I'm just tired of that. It's enough already. Yeah.
Okay.
But is it possible? You can't end bias. Like, bias is never going away. Favoritism is never going away. We live in a world where who you know is much more important than what you know, and that's not changing, no matter what the left or right says, and there's another question about that later, but there's always going to be bias. First, you'll have Indians that say, oh, we can't get this job because you're Indian. No, maybe because you have an accent, so I don't think you can communicate very well. I'm not saying it's right, but there are issues. If you can't communicate very well, you shouldn't be a bloody copper. You shouldn't be a lawyer speaking to a magistrate or a judge. There are issues because your client's case could be prejudiced. And I'm going to stay away from the gender stuff, but bias is never going away. And I think we need to realise that. We can work on it, but accept it. That's right. And you you can beat it. And there's another one. What about good-looking people do better than not so good-looking people? That happens. That happens in my profession all the time. And women are basically now, I think, 60-odd% of the lawyers, for example. The ratio of men to women in law has drastically changed over the last few years. And there are some studies, or there's some speculation and conjecture that says it could be roughly 80% women to 20% guys in a few years. Imagine that. But then you're going to have the exact opposite issue where, so what happens then? Yeah. Like, not everyone wants, I'd say this in the nicest possible way, wants a female lawyer, and maybe a female lawyer might not want to do certain types of cases, I don't know. But horses for courses, I guess.
Let's involve the audience to choose where we go next, shall we? Be a bit more democratic. We can go to food, or a question on food, or we can go to family, or we can go to leadership, or we can go into goal setting. So, want to go to food? Wow. All right, we'll do one more question, then we'll have a break. This question is, we're going to Andy Anderson again, though. The question is for you from Naomi. Naomi says, the carnivore diet will also, I guess, include ketogenic low-carb diet, similar sort of thing. The carnivore diet is growing in participants as it is the diet Homo sapiens evolved to thrive on. How can we make carnivore mainstream, low-carb, I guess, so hospitals become places for healing and not for lifestyle illnesses such as cancer, type 2 diabetes, obesity, weak hearts, and hypertension associated with our current eating system?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's, again, great question. I think it's going to be very challenging. There's a lot of good things out there to heal people. There's a lot of things, whether it's food or other therapies, that should be mainstream and should be used in hospitals. But also, we need to realise that we're battling big pharma, corporate. There's a lot of money in people being sick. There's a lot of money in all these areas that are unfortunately affecting us negatively, right? There's a lot. And so there's a war on meat at the moment. There's a war on health in general. And I think to get it mainstream, it's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot of experts standing up and speaking against the norm and speaking against what's happening right now. And I think, as we've seen over the last 3 years, it's not that simple, is it? You know, there's a lot of smart people that don't stand up or don't have the backbone to push the right thing all the time. So I think that, unfortunately, it's not a fast solution, and we may or may not ever get it to mainstream. But I think as long as the individuals that are looking to improve their health are doing the research, looking in alternative areas, they're trying these things out, and they are actually looking at the studies, and they are reading themselves. They're taking initiative, unlike a lot of people. Then you're going to be able to help yourself, and you're going to be able to help the people that you care about. But to get it mainstream and fully change the world, I don't know if I have that answer.
So let's broaden this to the entire panel on the food topic. I've noticed, I've met a number of very healthy vegetarians and vegans lately, and so it struck me that it's not really so much embracing an animal-based diet or carnivore, keto, low-carb, or going vegan or vegetarian. It's just getting off the crap diet, getting off big food, you know, the companies that raised me. The stories I could tell. So let's broaden the question. Why is it that veganism and plant-based is being grabbed onto by big food? Whereas if you want to go in other, supposedly, if that's fringe, then on the other side of fringe of a carnivore diet or a low-carb diet or eating butter and eggs or whatever, that somehow is the devil and evil. And veganism is very different. What is going on here between the triangle of standard diet and then veganism used to be this health fringe thing, and now that's being co-opted by the mainstream?
Vegan food's not easy. That's the problem. And I'm not a vegan. I eat meat every day, 3 times a day. But the problem with vegan food is, where do you get vegan food? It's very difficult. It's easier to process vegan food. If you are a vegan, eat Indian food, because that is the best for vegans. That's just we've been doing it for years. But in Australian mainstream, it's easier to put crap together, mix it up and say this is vegan. A biscuit could be vegan if you take certain ingredients out of it, right? That's the problem. Whereas with real meat, unless you have the lab-grown meat which is coming in, it's a lot harder. And I think with this, right, one thing we need to do is actually protect, our first goal should be to protect real meat. I think bringing it mainstream is different. If we don't protect it, we could lose it altogether.
Real meat?
Real meat, yeah. Lab-grown meat is being pushed.
Yeah, okay.
Forget the plant-based.
Because I've met these healthy vegan vegetarians, and none of them engage in. They call the plant-based stuff, Beyond Burger. They call that garbage, crap, rubbish.
It's
they
shit.
won't touch it. They'll get their own sprouted breads and whatever else.
Cornflakes is vegan, right?
Yeah.
So how's that good for you? And does anyone actually know how cornflakes was made by Dr. Kellogg? You should really look into it. It was made to reduce our testosterone levels because that was meant to be the root of all evil. But no one really understands that.
There's an interview on discernible.io, click on interviews, search for Gary Fettke, F-E-T-T. He talks about the history of Kellogg's and how they created through Seventh-day Adventists, how they created veganism.
So if you are going to eat vegan, look for diets that are genuinely vegan and use actual real plant-based vegan food. And that's why I say Indian food is great, because you have lentils, you have beans, and you have other sources, potatoes, for example, which still probably aren't the best in terms of process what we have now.
Yeah, but that's not owned by a big food company.
No, it's not. 100%.
Free, yeah.
But we've also got to remember the quality of the food product we have now is not as good as it would have been once been. And I can tell you now, when I have fruit and veg in India, it tastes so much better than what it is here. And that's a big comparison to make. But when I go to Punjab in India, it is fresh. I drink raw milk there. It is amazing.
Yum.
Here, I had to source it on the bloody black market to get raw milk because I didn't want to get arrested.
Once we turn the cameras off, can we all
source it up?
Yeah, you're up for that. If anyone has sources, let's talk about it. Yeah, okay. So going on from that, you've got about 4 high performers are sitting on this table around me, right? How much does diet play into your high performance? Let's start down there with Matt, if at all.
Yeah, it's a massive part of it. So I've struggled with my health a lot. So I've had kind of like an IBS kind of thing going on for like 5 years, and I've had chronic fatigue, and I've felt kind of like depressed because of it, because it's so interlinked with our brains. And so, I think in a lot of people, we struggle with different health issues. I think if you don't have your health, your foundation to do really anything else on top of that is just so extremely limited. And I feel very, very blessed to be able to have access to enough money to pay for good health. I think that's a major thing as well. Like, so many people can't afford it because of all the things that Samir was talking about. Like, it's so much cheaper just to buy cornflakes. And like I've got a friend of mine who's always sick, and he doesn't make much money. He's a pastor. He's a great guy, but I know that they buy the black and gold. I don't know if that's still around, but they buy the cheap stuff, but they don't understand the impact of it. So I think it's the foundation of everything. I think if you can get your health right, then you're able to do a lot. And if not, it's kind of like your hands are tied behind your back.
Does diet play a big portion for you in high performance? I would argue that I see a correlation. I'm just not sure if there's causation. Every high performer I know is strong with their diet, whether it's either side. But I often also see people with good diets who are not high performers.
Well, I mean...
But I've never come across a high performer with a bad diet.
For me, it plays a huge role. I eat low carb generally on a carb cycle. I only eat carbs after the gym. I think I've spoken to Andy about this before. But literally, the only times I'll have carbs is after the gym. We've eaten. When we go out for lunch, I just eat meat and veg. Salad. Yeah. And whether that be, I can still have my curries, I just won't have the rice. There's plenty of ways to do it. And even if I have Chinese food, for example, there's probably going to be more carbs in there, but you can still minimize it. But yes, for me, it plays a huge part. But I actually think being fit for me helps me be a better lawyer. Because one, and this is, again, not to sound weird here, but I try to look my best in court, which is dress. And for the suit to fit properly, I want to be leaner and I want to be sharper, because I want to wear the suit that fits me properly, because then when I look at people, I can intimidate them and win in that sense as well.
Such a shark.
But this is how I perform. This is how I get my stuff done. And honestly, I can tell you now, you have some lawyers that walk in that are overweight, really badly dressed, and not going to be given the same credence as someone who looks better. Unless you're 70 and you're a QC or KC at the end of your name, which I never want to be a barrister anyway, but I don't have. So the only thing I've got is dress properly, look the part, and be articulate. But even being articulate for me comes from my diet. So I've been doing carbs. I've been carb cycling for about 15 years now, and I'm not changing, which is why I really want to protect meat, because without it, I can't do it.
Ingrid, you get to sit with CEOs and corporate and higher level sort of people. I don't know why we think that's higher level, but traditional, business leaders. What correlations have you seen between performance and higher status, higher performance, higher positioned individuals and their diets? Anything you've noticed?
I think it's broader than just diet, actually. I think if we kind of look at health, so you've got physical health, and diet is a massive component of that. You've got people that are incredibly successful, but their diets might be poor, their stress levels are extraordinary, and they tend to have, really poor health after that. So their success is limited in its time frame. They can't endure. So you've got them, and then you've got other people that look like they've got a really, like they're really happy about how they are in leadership, and they tend to also be people that look after their physical well-being, but they also look after their emotional and mental well-being as well. So and I'm seeing more people like that performing at a high level that have that more of that holistic approach to their overall well-being. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question? Because on that note, I agree with you completely. I work with barristers who are probably going to die tomorrow or the next day from a heart attack.
Yeah.
I worked with one in particular who was really, really good.
Yeah.
He had 3 heart attacks in 2 years. I don't know how he's still walking. But then he decided to fix his diet after that. So could these people performing at that level be better if they improve their diet?
Oh, I don't think there's a question about that, and I think, again, it's, we're complex. As human beings, we're complex, and people's reasons for having poor diets is, there's usually a psychological drive there, because, if it was just a function of having access to means, we've talked about them, and that's a reality. But a lot of these successful people certainly have the money. So what's driving that poor choice of diet? I mean, we can order anything in today. Most of that, there's lots and lots of choice. So, that kind of negates that argument. So then that comes back to how they see themselves and how they value their own lives, I would say. So, so absolutely, they could be even more successful, perhaps even more balanced, if they understood what they were really putting into their bodies, where it comes from, and how everything's connected. So if it doesn't have a life force attached to it, we're putting it into our bodies, how can that possibly be good?
Well, it is easier to eat unhealthy food, and I honestly think that is... In fact, healthy food's getting more expensive. Veggies are getting more expensive rather than processed foods. Like, cornflakes is so much cheaper. If you ate that all day, every day, you'd never run out of food, right? And you would save on your bill. But I don't know how long you're going to live, and you definitely ain't going to look like Andy by any means. I think you're going to look the exact opposite. But this is one of the reasons I actually think everyone, whether they're male or female, should know the basics of cooking, or at least putting stuff together. It doesn't take long. Some of the stuff I do takes me about 5-10 minutes, and it's easy and it's convenient, but that's one of the issues, because it's not convenient to eat healthy at the moment. If you've got a lot of money, you can hire someone to cook for you, but if you don't, takeaway is easy, right? But then again, takeaway costs a lot of money too, but people don't, it's not that time, you're not spending that time in the kitchen. And unfortunately, guys seem to hate cooking generally. I know we don't. I think all of us probably do.
All 3 of us here love cooking. Yeah. Four of us. All right. Shall we soldier on into some more questions, or shall we take our 11-minute break? 11-minute break. See you in 11 minutes. Welcome back to Better Than Q&A, where we don't ask questions. You ask the questions and we get answers much better than the ABC. And we do it for about $1,000 a show instead of $100,000. Thank you for everyone who supports us on Locals. The reason why a lot of this is coming to you for free is because of people at discernible.locals.com who support what we do. And this particular event, there are people in this room who paid to be here, and there are 10 people who donated a ticket. So thank you for that. Let's move on with the rest of our show. We have a couple more questions and then some audience questions, and then we have a combined lunch if you'd like to join me in the bistro downstairs. No, it's on the same level. No carbs. Are you coming to lunch?
Steak,
yeah. No carbs. What else? Salad.
Cheat day.
No, Andy's coming. I still maintain I don't know how Ethelyn looks like she looks, and she eats rubbish with me on occasion. All right. So here's a question for you all. I would like to know some goal setting and some creating our identities and our life. Catherine says, what is one characteristic that you believe every leader should possess? And Madeline has got a similar question. What is the best advice you would give to a learning leader? So let's go through people. First of all, just leader. Why would I want to be a leader? What does that even mean? And what are the characteristics you see in good leaders? Anyone can start.
I mean, everyone here has probably heard of the whole sheep thing, right? Don't be a sheep. But basically, in the last 3 years, I didn't even know what that meant before, but in the last 3 years, I've been very well acquainted, or become very well acquainted with that term, what being a sheep is. Why do you want to be a leader? Because you are the people that can affect change, or leaders can affect change. And there are groups, there are movements that require leaders. So ultimately, we need different leaders for different groups, but then again, even amongst that, there could be many, many different leaders, and everyone has inherent qualities that they could, how do I say this? Inherent qualities in themselves that could lead to creating or effecting change in the long run. That's why we need leaders. But ultimately, the other thing is, if you just have a headless chicken running around, without its head, it's nothing, right? And if you have an organisation or a movement that doesn't have a leader or a leadership group, it's not going to get anywhere. It's very, very important. I think one of the things that I've learned over the last 3 years is our country in general is a lot weaker than I thought.
Ooh, yeah.
Australians are very apathetic. And
I would argue then, based on that, this room is actually full of leaders.
I agree though. But
Society,
that's the thing, 100%.
yeah, societal leaders, cultural
And
leaders.
risk takers. There's a lot of risk takers here. How many people here have lost their jobs or know people that have lost their jobs? And how many people here personally have experienced some sort of negative impact because of the last 3 years, whether it's through themselves or vicariously? This room and your viewage, or your audience generally, will be the people that have actually stood up and have professed to have a different view and haven't just gone with what the government's told them. And I am very upset with this country at this point in time because I did not expect Australia to be what it is. I mean, that's not why I came here. And I mean,
You're 6 weeks old. Come on.
That's not why my parents came here, I should say. But ultimately, what I've also seen, the good part of the last 3 years is people have realised, and this I'm going to target police here generally. I've been speaking about police brutality for a while and unreasonable use of force. I've had it on me. Only a few years ago, as a lawyer after court, I've had tasers pulled on me because the cops didn't believe who I was. This is no bullshit. This has actually happened. And this was about 4 or 5 years ago. After court, we won a costs argument in a battle in Burwood local court. In Ashfield, I went for dinner with my friend. Started off with 1 cop car, ended up with 3. My ID was in the back. They wouldn't tell me while they pulled me over. I just let it go. It was a battle I wasn't going to win. And at one point when I went to get my ID, I had tasers pulled on, not used, I should say, but ready to go in case there was something in there. At the end of it, they then told me the reason they pulled me over because a car matching my car's description was reported stolen, which is pretty typical. I've heard that a few times with other clients too. Where was I going with that? Anyway.
So what's one characteristic that every leader should possess?
One characteristic of leadership, I think the biggest one is listening. And I think our so-called leaders now don't listen. They pretend to listen, but they don't.
I'm not sure that we say we want that, but it doesn't seem we want that. It seems like we want strong men.
Yeah, but strong men or women still listen.
That may be true, but we want the perception of he knows what he's doing, and we'll leave it alone. This will bring me into, I want to talk to Matt Lavaz about this. This idea of family and this kind of lost art of leadership in a family and fatherhood and so on. So, Madeline asked, what is the best advice you'll give to a learning leader? You mentioned earlier about the role of a strong functioning family unit in society affecting society. How much of that is about, how much of the leadership set in a family spills out into good leadership in society? Keeping in mind, please, also for blended and broken families where there is no father.
Yeah, well, I grew up with a single mum, and she raised me and my 2 sisters, and I think she did an amazing job. She worked really hard, and we never really had much money, and we had hand-me-downs, and we used to get bread donated from the church every Monday called the bread run. I don't know if anyone else got the bread run. Yeah, you and my sisters. And so we used to get pumped about that because we get coffee scrolls and smash them down, and yeah. And so I didn't have my dad around me. I never had a demonstration of good male leadership at all. I have a good relationship with him now. But I've heard this being said 1,000 times by other people, but if you don't have a father or if you don't have male leadership, then you find it in other places. And I found leadership from other friends. And that's just the most ridiculous plan to raise people, because it's the blind leading the blind. It was that, hip-hop music, and bad movies. I don't know if anyone remembers Snap Pants.
Pull your pants on.
Yeah. But you have to be an idiot to wear those pants, right? That's because we didn't have leadership. So I think that the leadership in the family, and shout out to single mums and single dads, because I think it must be the hardest thing. I've got My wife and I live together at the moment with my mother-in-law, and she's amazing, and we still get stressed. So I can just total love and respect anyone who's doing it in a broken family. The demonstration that the children have is the parents, and that they're going to learn from that, and they're going to model it. And I think to answer the question, like, what's a great trait in leadership, is it's appreciating the concept of modeling. You're going to model something, either unconsciously or consciously. That's why I think TikTok is a bad idea. Because, man, I saw a TikTok the other day and it like broke my heart, because I've got young kids now, like super young. So I don't think I can speak too much on family, because I've only got a 2-year-old boy and a month-old girl. But I saw like this girl on Instagram, I think, or somewhere, some reel, and I swear she was like 10.
Oh no.
You know, dancing kind of sexualized, and I'm just like, fuck. That's the worst thing for another 10-year-old girl to see. That's terrible. And I know people talk, you know, sexual revolution, yay, it's a good thing. But we're all learning from each other.
No.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, no.
Good. Well done.
When he leaves, keep it aside for me. Don't.
You want to eat fast or you don't eat around here.
Right. Yeah, so I think that, as I said, we're all learning from someone. And if we can have great leadership in the home, then that's the foundation for everything else. And it's the strongest foundation that we can provide for families. Now, within that, though, another trait that's really important is the foundation of all leadership of others is simply just self-leadership. And so so I believe that we're all leaders because we're all responsible for ourselves. And I think all problems come from either an unconscious or a conscious abdication of self-leadership, which means it's not my problem, it's someone else's problem. And when you are that person, then you breed that in other people. And if we have a society that doesn't take responsibility for stuff, then they're just going to want, I guess in the end, the government to step in and change it for them. Or we have people that are willing to take responsibility and say, that one's on me, I'm going to do something about it, and I'm going to become a better version of myself, and hopefully that inspires someone else to do it as well.
How much of that needs to come from the family, and how much can it be modelled in? So government seems to, if we take a charitable view of government, they would see a lot of broken families, increasing divorce rates and so on, and then they'd want to create programs and state-centric structures to, and this is a charitable view, to help fix those, the reality of lots of broken families. So, for example, lack of fathers is a common thing, especially in the US. So the government comes in with all these other programs and gives role models, and perhaps they're bad. How much does it need to come from the family, and how much do we need to change and put our hope in the government providing better role models? Because some people would say, no, the government can never do it, society can never do it, it's got to go back to traditional. But I'm wondering if we can actually get a lot better at a institutional level.
Well, I think that the goal is that the family is the first defense if it works. But obviously we know it doesn't always work, and things are, I don't think anyone starts a family with the intention for it to not work. No one says, let's have some children and mess them up. It happens because things happen that is kind of, a disaster happens, and everyone does their best to respond to it. And I think that, that's kind of it. But outside of that, I think that it's probably less than a government way to think about it, but more a community way that we all need to think about it. If there's a mum that is raising her children on her own, then there should be another father to step in somewhere and provide some support for that family. I think if we think about it more in a community perspective, and if we teach people to take responsibility for themselves, so this is the thing, if you can't take responsibility for you, then you're no good taking responsibility for someone else. You don't have anything left to flow over into the community. But if you be someone who can sort your shit out, then you have time and energy and maybe resources to be able to help other people. And so I think, again, it comes back to self-leadership, and if the government can provide things like that, I'm sure that they do in some ways that that are great, then we need that as well. We need as much support as possible.
Thank you, Matt Lavas. Let me check. Are there any audience questions? I will go to Ingrid. Hang on. I just want to see, are there audience questions? I'm just preparing my list here for later on. Do you have questions, people, or we'll stick to ours? No questions. No audience questions. All right. Ingrid.
Hello.
Hi. So you want to say something about leadership?
I just, because I'd also written about modelling behaviour, I find that that's one of the most important components of a very strong leader. My experience of working with leaders has been that when they don't like something in their team members, or, you know, they're dissatisfied with a level of performance, it usually shows up in their own behaviour in some way, shape or form. It's not always linear, but it's always there. So there's that. And I also, you know, as a single mother, I was a single mother for many, many years, and I was also raised by a single mother and some amazing grandparents, I might add. The family unit was front and centre in my life, thank goodness. But it was interesting because as a single mum, I used to beat myself up all the time, like I'm not doing a good enough job, I'm working too much, you know, all of that stuff. And, you know, Charlie, my son, would often come along to meetings with me, and, you know, I had my own business, so I had a little bit more flexibility, but I did that by design so that I wouldn't have to put him into childcare because I wanted to raise my own child. But, you know, like I was saying about the 50th, you know, he gave a speech, and what I realised was that it wasn't the things that I said, because I always used to say, oh, if I could just find the right words and motivate him, and, you know, he's had some ups and downs in his life. But I have to say that the things that he's taken away has not been the things that I was told him, much to my chagrin. I thought that I gave great advice, but it was how I was, and that was really humbling, but also really reaffirming, because it's hard being a parent. It's even harder being a single parent, because everything's down to you, good, bad and indifferent, and you're it, and there is no backstop. That is it. And so when you hear that from your child, the importance of that modelling, it's, you know, that reinforced it to me too. So when I heard that, and then when we were talking about families, I just thought, oh, yeah, there's a lot there.
Do you see linkages between family, what we've been talking about, family unit, leadership demonstrated there, parenting, the struggles that you've mentioned, like being single parent, and then some of the ills in society? Oh. Is there a causative relationship?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And the older I'm getting, the more I'm able to kind of look back at patterns across life. And I think the breakdown of the family, and I'm not necessarily talking about, you know, the nuclear family or anything like that, but just breakdowns in families. So when we look at people that, you know, come from other countries to here who don't have that backstop of grandparent support or even broader family support, you know, I just admire them so much, because they have to not only make a living for themselves, usually very, very different from where they came from. There's a lot of sacrifice there. Then there's, you know, children who are struggling with that clash of cultures and so forth. And I just think without that broader family, you know, it's very, very tough. I don't know how people do it, but people do it. Samir was talking about some of those issues there. But for my mind, I think that no one's going to love a child like family. There's something that is just in kin that really gives children an identity that they can lean on. Regardless of the troubles that they go through, they can come back to that. And then from there, they can go out into society. So they learn a lot of those core values from the family. They know that there's unconditional love. I know that there's some families that don't have that, but I'm talking generally speaking here. And then from there, I think they learn a lot of the ways in which they want to be in life and what they don't want to be too. There's a lot of strength in seeing a parent not be perfect and then say, well, I want to be different to that as well, but I love them anyway, hopefully.
What are you best?
Yeah, I think I want to just bounce off what you said, Matty, and I think self-leadership is definitely the answer to so many issues. And I think if we're talking high performance, and we had to sum up some characteristics or put two together and make it one, just to be efficient. But solutions-focused optimism would be one that just comes to me all the time. And I think every leader and self-leader needs to be solutions-focused and have optimism, because you need to, if you want to be a leader or a self-leader or change the world in any way, you need a vision. You need a powerful vision, and you're not going to be able to create a powerful vision without optimism, definitely, and without being solution-focused. And I think if we can create or inspire more individuals in community and in general to take ownership and be more solutions focused and to be more optimistic about what they can do and what they can influence and where they can go, and we start creating a vision for our future that inspires us every day to wake up and put effort into living, put effort into inspiring, put effort into helping others, then you can imagine if even 60% of the population did that, how different the world would be, right? And how different society would be. So I think that the answer to so many issues is just inspiring every individual to take responsibility. Self-leadership is definitely the answer. And I think that solutions-focused optimism would serve many, many people.
I'm feeling a theme here amongst all of us. It seems to be this hierarchy of priorities. Focus on the self, get what you're talking about, work on that, and that will extend into our families, whatever that looks like, nuclear, broken, whatever, and then that will extend into society. I've heard a lot of people talk about from the family to society, but I haven't heard people talk from the self to the family to society. So
I just want to add on another point. It's something that Samir said earlier. So, Samir, you had your first child when you were quite young, and you said that was a game changer for you. One of the things that I've seen as a pattern in my own life and in other people's lives is one of the indicators that will get us to take responsibility is usually something outside of us. So it's like a bigger cause that you have to sign up for, and sometimes you sign up for it, but sometimes it's like it happens and it presents itself. And I can see that massively in my own life. Like I was I grew up in Geelong in Victoria, and I failed school. I got expelled a bunch of times. I took way too many drugs, wore too many of the snap pants, graffitied too many fences. That was my life. And I reckon that if I didn't have something else to sign up for, if that kind of makes sense, and initially it was like employment. I had to get my shit together and start wearing better clothes to keep a job. And then it was running my own business and having responsibility, and then it's been my wife, and now it's my family. But I think if I didn't have those things, and my faith, if I didn't have those things, I would be an asshole. I think my default is to be a douchebag. I don't think my default is greatness in any way, and I think that if you have something, if you can sign up for responsibility, then that's the biggest motivator for self-leadership, because you have to do it. If I didn't have to do it, maybe I wouldn't do it. So I think that's a big indicator as well.
You just raised the topic of motivation, so let me ask, very, very short answer here. I just want to hear from everyone on the panel. What's better, extrinsic motivation or intrinsic? So external motivating forces or internally motivated?
Personally, I go for external. I think there has to be, I was arguing with someone about this the other day, talking about why do people procrastinate. I think people procrastinate because there aren't enough consequences.
Lack of external motivations.
Yeah, getting away with it.
Yeah, that seems to be our society. Extrinsic or intrinsic motivation?
Yeah, external as well.
External?
I agree. Yeah.
Because I thought you would have said internal, just get up, lift those weights.
Yeah, no. I am really strategic about how I stay motivated, and a lot of it has to do with consequences or the negatives and also the positives, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, will they kick that away? Extrinsic or intrinsic motivation?
I'd say they're both the same thing. There's no such thing as objective. Every objective thing has a subjective element, and this is the same. Extrinsic and intrinsic are very similar. What can be external can become internal anyway. For example, lifting weights might be to pick up chicks, right? But that's also an external, not just an internal one. I think they're both the same. So
But what if you have to get up tomorrow at 8 a.m. because you'll lose your job if you don't and go? That's external.
No, it's also internal, because if I lose my job, that's a me problem as well. That's not just an external thing. So it's both. I honestly think they're the same thing.
Okay.
Or they're so overlapped, they're both motivating features.
This would be a good game to play on the lines.
Yeah.
Extrinsic or intrinsic motivation?
So for me, motivation is by definition external, and you can have negative, consequences that are going to motivate you to not have those, and then you're going to have attractors that are going to be something to work towards. And I think you need those, but they're usually, to be effective, they're usually by nature short-term to kind of get a shifted behaviour in order to get a particular outcome. What's more longer-lasting is inspiration, and that comes from within. So it's that connection to, and you can connect that to an external, as has been talked about before, but I think that's where somebody gets up, because it's beyond just the external achievement. It's because of who they are and how they want to be.
Okay. I'm quite surprised. Is anyone surprised by that external, internal thing? Yeah, you've got a lot of nodding heads, because we see high-performance people in whatever area of life, and the stereotype is they're somehow stronger on the inside, and they just push through, and they just go to the gym, and they eat well, and they don't eat the Kit Kat. But I'm realising they're probably just as weak as the rest of us, but they've just learned how to master their environment and their habits. All right, we only have one more question that I'm going to go to. So I'll just check again, if anybody wants to ask a question of the panel, let me know. If not, we'll go to our last question. Our last question is from Ethlyn. How can you make abstract ideas into quantifiable outcomes? So, for example, these ideas of chasing happiness, chasing your purpose, how do you transform that into an actual quantity in an outcome? And Nicola asked a similar question. Can you please, panel, give us some simple tips on how to break down my goals into smaller, achievable step-by-step goals to eventually get to my dream goals? So this idea of chunking, which is made famous by, I think, Tim Ferriss. Also, do you have any helpful tips on how to stop ruminating so much, so just taking action? So let's take it from the top. How do you take an abstract idea? I want to be happy. I want to be fit. I want to be whatever. How do I make that into a quantifiable goal? Yeah, sure.
Yep.
Anyone
Okay.
who wants to.
All right. Okay. So I think it's about just defining what that is. So you're really clear about what that means. So if I was Ethlyn and I was thinking about, okay, well, what are my abstract ideas? So for example, if we're chasing happiness here, what does happiness mean for you? So, and then getting a defined specific example of what happiness would mean, and then working back from that and saying, okay, well, if that's what happiness means, what are all of the situations in which that would happen and happen in, and how would I measure that? So how would I know that happiness is taking place? And then how are some of those things, what are some of those progress markers towards that? But I would also argue that some of this is happiness. I don't mean to sound trite here, but happiness isn't a destination; it's a decision. I think, and it's a byproduct along the way of how you are.
So
in the pursuit of other things.
Okay,
Yeah.
so how would you practically do it? Because you said, we need to define exactly what do you mean by your happiness. How
Yeah.
do you sit down with a book and think? Do you talk to a friend? Do you take a
Yeah.
quiz? What can we do?
Yeah, so I think, again, I think you need to take that internal understanding that you have and try to make it external in some way, shape or form. So for some people it might be writing that down. For other people it might be just clarifying that thinking through, having somebody kind of tease that out or challenge that definition for yourself so that you can get clarity over that. Or it might be some other way, but I think that you need to come from the internal into the external, get some clear definitions, get some clear and tangible examples of what that needs to be specifically, and then you've got a pathway.
All right, before we go to the panel members, if you want to make any closing comments at the end, get those in your mind now. I'll give you an opportunity. So for the rest of the panel, chunking. This idea of making quantifiable outcomes. What else? Also, tips on how to stop ruminating so much. Any thoughts?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think with the chunking side of things, it's important and practical to just have an idea of what you want to achieve, set the goal, and then you just have to work backwards and chunk it out in a timely manner. I don't think it's really not that complicated, to be honest. I think it's just about practicing and working to make sure that the goal and the chunks fit within a certain time frame. So if it's a weight loss goal, for example, you want to lose 10 kilos, you're not going to do that in a week, healthily anyway. So you want to be able to stagger that out, and then once you know the time frame, it might be 6 weeks or 10 weeks, You ask the question, what's it going to take within that week in order to achieve it? And it might be nutrition, it might be training, and then you can break that down into your daily or hourly chunks. So I like to work from macro all the way down to micro to get a really clear plan. But on the point of...
Yeah, the sticking point is probably the ruminating then.
Yeah.
That's relatively simple. How do I stop ruminating so much? Ruminating is like a cow does. You know, they chew grass over and over and over. We do that with our minds.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, look, I think the best thing you can do is take action whether you know it's right or wrong. You just have to get moving. So many people want perfection straight away and they get so caught up in doing the right thing all of the time. And you're never going to have all the answers, and that's also part of leadership and self-leadership. A good leader or self-leader takes action on 60% of the information and just does what it takes straight away. So I think you have to be okay with fucking things up along the way, and you have to make moves whether you know everything or not. I think that's a really important part of just making progress. And just quickly on that point of happiness, I think happiness is 50% gratitude and 50% progress. So it's like anything in life, you can be happy right now. And I think this is a mistake we all make, and I definitely do, and I kick myself often on this, is that there's so many things in life. I don't have everything I want, and I'm not everything I want to be. I don't have everything I want to have, and I'm not where I want to be right now. But I am so grateful for so many things that I have right now. So many people, so many special people, so many moments, even just being here with you guys right now, like-minded people. I think what we do is we get so fixated on being where we need to be that we then take for granted everything that we have right now, and it's just the biggest trap and mistake that we can make. And again, I'm saying that from experience because I do it all the time. And then often you don't realise that until you lose something, right? Until it's gone. And then you think back and you're like, fuck, I actually had happiness. So I think if you're going to be strategic about it, number one, every little bit of progress in all the areas of life, whether it's family, finance, fitness, contribution, all those areas, if you are being strategic and chunking micro bits of progress every single day and moving forward, you're going to find happiness in that progress. And then if you take a moment every single day, or hopefully a moment every hour or minute even, to just be patient and look around at what you have and the connections that you have and the love that you have and the freedom you have, and just breathe and take that in and be grateful for that, you will be fucking happy right now as well. And so if you can combine the both, I think that's where happiness lies.
And maybe a meta question. Thank you. Maybe a meta question for Samira and Matt, if you want to take this. Given everything we've talked about today, and we're wrapping up now, doing this despite our circumstances, doing this despite our government, doing this despite our job losses and so on. What do you think? How do we push through the crap?
Use it as fuel. Use it to fuel you.
Well, you need to change things, right? We can't do this last 3 years again, and if some people are to be believed, climate change lockdowns are next, whatever it could be, and I don't know whether that's true or not, but let's just say for argument's sake it is. You can't let this happen again. Freedom should be inherent, and as people in this room and as potential leaders or leaders, as these guys have spoken about already, it's up to you guys to make the change, because 70% of Australia apparently doesn't give a shit and is happy to sit at home and be locked down for 3 days a year, or sorry, a week in order to cut down emissions. I'm not cool with that.
They're like clapping seals, aren't they, most of Australia?
It is. And this goes back to my disappointment. That's where I was going with that line. Disappointment in the country, because it's just been too easy. And we've let it, not us, but when I say us, I mean Australia, we've let it happen way, way, way too easily. The first lockdown, maybe at that point people were scared, you get it. I mean, I was probably one of those people who said, you know what, the government, at this point in time, maybe they might have a point. But that didn't last long. It lasted me about a month. I was like, this is just getting stupid. How long is this going to continue? Can't see your family, can't do this, can't do that. So the biggest motivation out of the last 3 years is don't let it happen again. And that's why we need to change stuff. And if it's not for you guys that are here, average Australian isn't going to change it. And I can tell you, people who are culturally inclined from my background weren't as strong as I thought they would be. Lebanese crowd, totally different. They're brilliant and they're very outspoken. Some of the Greeks and Italians were great too, but I'm very disappointed in my fellow Indian or Indo-Australian. They were weak. There's religious breakdowns here as well, but I don't want to get too biased. But going into that point, generally speaking, I think a lot of Indians let it go. And that just disappoints me a lot.
So it seems the people in this room and the people watching online, it's up to us to lead our cultures out of this mess, even though we're in the minority. Hey, give me your closing statement, everyone, and also I'll give you a challenge. I want you to, you like games and challenges. Give me your closing statement. Tell us where we can find you via an elevator pitch. Please give me an elevator pitch to me and the people here. Convince me, what do you do? Like, sell yourself to me. We're in an elevator. How would you pitch you, your business or your life or your job or you, your personality? How would you pitch it to me? No, I'm just pausing because I've just dropped a bomb on everyone to do this.
I am not a very good salesperson.
Yeah, this is good. This is going to be fun.
I'm not a very good. Basically, I would say when you're in shit, you're going to need me. So remember who I am.
And how can people find you when they're in the poo?
Banger.
Banger. B-A-N-G-A. Banger legal.
Look, I'm pretty lucky with my last name. Magistrates remember it. Judges remember it. People tend to remember it.
You're a banger.
It works.
All right. Thank you for your closing statement. When you're in shit, call me. Let's thank Samir Banger for being with us today. Maybe I'll give you a bit more time, Ingrid. Would you like to give us a closing statement and a pitch? Who are you? Where can we follow you? Where can we buy your stuff?
I think I can't remember who said it earlier, but it was a great statement that the problem that this country has is too much apathy. And I think that's the biggest disease, is if you just don't care about stuff, or you think, oh, it doesn't affect me. And I think part of the solution part of the solution to apathy is you have to get fed up with stuff. And if you are willing to get fed up enough about certain things inside your own life to then start changing them, which is self-leadership, then you'll prove to yourself that you can change things. And I think that's the other part of apathy, is like, oh, I can't change anything. There's nothing that I could do. And that's what, I think that's why Jordan Peterson's been so popular with his statement, make your own bed. And then other people will say, well, that won't change anything. Well, at least make your bed look nice. And then you can go from there. What else can you make? And so I think in my closing statement, I'd like to say, get fed up with stuff in your own life. Get fed up with your health. Get fed up with your finances. Get fed up with your relationships. Whatever it is that you're unhappy with, because we're more motivated to change things that cause us pain than we are to move towards pleasure. And so if you can see it from that perspective, you'd be more likely to do something about it. And then like Samir said, we all need to get fed up with certain things. I've got, there's 3 people that I know, direct friends of mine, that are male, young, and have myocarditis. That's fucked. Like, one of them had to get 2 vaccines to keep working, and sat down with his family because he thought, I might just die. He had to think through that stuff, and he just dodged the bullet, and he's kind of all right now. But for us to be able to get fed up about things like that, and many other things that are coming our way as well, I think unless we kind of get angry about them, not in a dysfunctional way because it doesn't change anything, but in a functional way to get pissed off about something, and that has to start with our own lives.
So make your bed.
Yeah, angrily.
Angrily. I know someone who... So I got this friend, right? He has a lawn that he didn't mow for about 10 months, 8 months.
Must be single.
Yeah. and I could see so much of his life would be unlocked if he just mowed his lawn. Right. And so I was gently like, hey, you going to mow your lawn? Yeah. And then sure enough, about 10 months in, he mowed his lawn. And I couldn't believe it, because I knew if he mowed his lawn, everything else would unlock. His life since, absolute taking off because he mowed his lawn. Something snapped in him. He mowed his lawn. He started doing all these other things, and his life is suddenly taking off.
Well, this is a human behavior principle. We do one thing like we do everything. Mm-hmm. Right? So if you have a room in your house that you can open up and there's shit everywhere, it's like the cupboard entry to Narnia. Do you know what I mean? Like you open up the door and there's a wind that blows through it or some shit. Then that will be happening in other parts of your life. You do one thing like you do everything. So if you don't take responsibility with the lawn, where are you not taking responsibility? Heaps of places.
Get angry and mow your lawns. Hey, how would you sell yourself? Where can we follow you? What do you do? What do you offer?
Yes, so Andy and I have recently teamed up and created a new company together called Relentless Education.
Relentless Education.
Relentless Education. So what we do is we work with coaches and service-based business owners, and we help two types of people. One, if you're brand new in the coaching-specific industry or online education industry, then we help you break through and build a business, get to your first $100,000 in the year. But we also work with entrepreneurs that have been in there for a little bit and want to scale their companies to up to $1 million or more. And the main type of person that we look for is someone who has a little bit of like go about them. We're not interested in working with you if you'd like to get advice on how to be in flow all the time and run a business. Please do not contact us. But if you know that you have to put in a little bit of hard work and it's going to be worth it, and you want to be someone of great character at the end of it as well, and contribute back to society and build a business and a lifestyle that allows you to have a level of freedom, then we are your guys.
Which is at relentlesseducation.com.au.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's funny that ChatGPT called you Matt Relentless Lavaz.
He knows me well.
Yeah. Closing statements and a sales pitch.
Beautiful. Yeah, well, I think, I think everybody here and everyone watching wants to improve and create change in their own lives and in society in general. And I think that a huge part to do that and fast track everyone's progress is to do the thing they're avoiding most and do the hard thing. Do the thing that scares you the most. And so if every single day you had that in mind, you woke up and you looked at what you were avoiding and what you were scared to do or scared to say, the conversations you're scared to have, and you did those things, within 12 months, you would be a completely different person. You'd be a superhero, legitimately. And so, this is something that I practice constantly in my life. I always chase down the things that scare the shit out of me. I always try to have the hardest conversations and do the things that make me uncomfortable. And I think that's what creates confidence and internal strength, which in turn creates self-leaders, which then creates leaders, which then of course can move on to change communities in the world and improve everything else. So that's what I'd say. Do the hard thing and do the thing that you're avoiding to do. And you sold everything, so well played.
Relentlesseducation.com.au.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here, Andy and Matt from Queensland. It's funny, of all the pitches, your one, they're good, they're great, but I'm like, yeah, when I get in shit, I need to call somebody back. That was such a simple and effective elevator pitch, but I don't know how you'd say that swear word to people in a formal setting. Ingrid, what's your closing remarks?
My closing remarks is a sales doctor, right? So that's my business, but I'm really out to really change the association with the word sales, because I actually think it's something to be proud of. If we're of service to one another, then that's truly something that I think is missing in society. And I think that when through service we get out of ourselves, we're there for the other, to deliver something that's of value to them, not something that we're trying to push on someone or convince someone of something that they're not trying to do or achieve or have. It's really about the enrichment of both parties. So that's certainly something that I think is kind of it's my way of contributing to creating something that's lasting. But I'd really like to say thank you for today. I think that this is an important forum. I'm so excited and I'm so grateful that you remembered me and invited me back. And I'd really like to say thank you to the people that showed up on a Saturday.
Yes.
And you obviously care a lot about this country, about this state. And you're doing something just by your very presence. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Ingrid, for being here. Thank you for joining us for Better Than Q&A. If you're watching this live on YouTube, you can probably scroll back over there. We've seen watch the rest of the drivel over there. Or you can join us next time on Friday, the 31st of March, with Peter Boghossian from the United States to talk to us. The topic is impossible conversations. He's going to teach us how to have... He invented this little game we played. So thank you for being here, everyone, and starting a new show. Let's see where it goes. Good night.
Good evening, comrades. I hope you're well. Give me a shout. Who's vaccinated? Woo! Yeah, fuck yeah. I overcame the hesitancy and misinformation today and I had my first shot. Thank you. It was heroin, but no tracking in 5G for me. It's just 5G and track marks. You know what I'm saying? Side effects include great poetry. What can I say? Fucking Paul Kelly really got me over the line. Do you know what I mean? Fucking stoked about it. I tell you what, it's so authoritarian though. We're going to talk about this. The language getting used around this issue. It's very concerning, right? Because I was listening to the radio this morning. In the morning, the police commissioner is the vaccine commander, right? And then the evening, he's the fucking police commissioner. So what are you doing morning shift in Gilead then the evening shift in Girraween, mate? What the fuck is going on here? Hey? Got more jobs than Basil Zampus? You can't, for fuck's sake. And the fucking corporate coercion and blackmailing, so whitemailing people with their employment, you know, like to get vaccinated, because we're all fucking pro-vax but anti-tax in corporate Australia, you know? And you know who else had a no jab, no job employment policy? Harvey Weinstein. At least, you know, Harvey's jab had years of rigorous testing, do you know what I mean? Fuck it, you might even win an Oscar, who knows? Say what you will about Harvey, at least he wasn't forcing his jab on kids.
Joint on a corner where the big boys play.